2 qualifying sessions down and 2 pole positions for Max Verstappen, who will start from P1 at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix for the first time. From RacingNews365.com, my name is Nick Golding, and joining me as always to discuss the biggest talking points from on and off the circuit again is none other than lead editor Ian Parks. Ian, Max on pole, 3 tenths of a second quicker than Leclerc in P2. Should we be worried for tomorrow? I think yes.
Yes, absolutely we should be worried. As we discussed in the video post-practice on Thursday, again I have to remind myself that practice was Thursday, today Friday is qualifying. Think back to last year, and Max had issues in qualifying here. He started 15th and he finished 2nd. Bearing in mind he finished the Bahrain Grand Prix 22 seconds ahead of his teammate Checo Perez. What on earth could he do around here on race day Saturday? It is a frightening prospect. The only thing that might hold him up, the only thing that might claw him back into the clutches of what is almost certain to be a chasing pack, are a couple of safety car incidents, or at least one, because we know this track, as we discussed yesterday, the Jeddah Corniche circuit, fastest street track in the world, it proclaims itself to be. But we also know, given that, it's prone to accidents, incidents, safety cars. So that's the only hope for the chasing pack behind Max Verstappen tomorrow, is a safety car that he can be clawed back and giving them an opportunity at least. Otherwise, we are going to be talking about who finished behind Max. Sadly, but true.
Well, obviously, we saw today, that actually in free practice 3, how brutal this track is, because Zhou Guanyu had a massive crash, which actually resulted in the first red flag of the weekend. He actually only got out in Q1 with about, I think, a minute and a half to go, so didn't set a lap. A great effort by Stake F1 to get the car repaired. I want to talk about Ferrari, because the star of today, without any doubt, is none other than Oliver Bearman. For those who are unaware, Carlos Sainz was sent to hospital for appendicitis and has undergone a successful surgery. But in his place, Ferrari's reserve driver, Oliver Bearman, who should have started on pole for F2, jumped into Sainz's SF24, not only got out of Q3, almost got into Q1. I think he was 300ths of a second away from making the top 10. What a performance on his debut, in the most historic team on the grid. That's some debut for him, and another Britain as well on the grid for tomorrow.
It's absolutely incredible what he achieved. First of all, best wishes to Carlos Sainz from all of us here at Racing News 365. And I'm sure, of course, all our followers, subscribers and viewers, thank you very much for all of your participation in watching these. And yes, Oliver Bearman, without a shadow of a doubt, finally we had a racing story on track that was not Christian Horner off it. So there was at least some relief today. Thank heaven for that. Late call. Speaking to Ollie in the media pen post-qualifying, he only knew a couple of hours before FP3 that he was going to be jumping in that car. As he admitted himself, no time to get nervous, no time to even contemplate what was about to unfold. And he absolutely delivered. I don't think too many people would have been critical of him if he'd failed to make it out of Q1. So the fact he came so close to making it into Q3, nearly pipping Lewis Hamilton, that goes to show just where he was at, Lewis is at, Mercedes is at present, because that was agonizing. A mistake over one of the curbs arguably cost him, as we saw. Anybody that watched qualifying hit one of the curbs quite hard, bounced over it a little bit, and that almost certainly cost him that fraction of a second from getting into Q3. As it is, he'll start P11 on the Grand Prix grid rather than P1 on the F2 grid. Just a tremendous performance. As he put it, the stars aligned for him today, and hopefully he can do well. He becomes the youngest driver to compete in a Grand Prix in Ferrari history, the 3rd youngest overall in Formula One history. Quite some achievement, that's for sure.
Now, going from the youngest driver, let's now talk about the oldest. Fernando Alonso, P4, but actually had good pace throughout the weekend. I keep saying weekend, it's not even a weekend yet. I can't wait for these Thursday, Friday, Saturday Grand Prix to be over, to be honest with you. But actually, he was obviously good here last season, obviously finished P3. Do you think he's really in the fight for the podium with Perez, who starts P3, with Leclerc in P2, under the understanding that obviously Verstappen is going to clear off into the distance, most likely?
Fernando mentioned afterwards that he's got a better feeling with the AMR 24 around this circuit compared to Bahrain last week. So from that position, has he got a chance of a podium? Again, I'm going to mention it, Nick. Sound like a stuck record a little bit. I think only if there's an incident ahead of him involving the top three, Max, Charles, and Checo, of course. But at least this is a good step forward for Aston Martin. Again, as we discussed post-practice, Mike Crack, the Aston Martin team principal, had mentioned that coming out of Bahrain, his team was fifth best, fifth quickest. Well, it looks quite obviously that this track suits their car better because whilst Aston Martin has taken a leap forward, McLaren and both Mercedes have moved quite clearly slightly backwards. For those curious as to what went wrong with Mercedes, as Lewis Hamilton put it, this car bouncing, just one word, bouncing. It's come back with a vengeance for Mercedes, certainly around this street track, that's for sure. And Lewis was smiling through the grief, shall we say, the pain of, not necessarily the physical pain, but the pain of being as low down on the grid as he is right now going into the race on Saturday. Not a happy bunny.
Do you think there's always a sense now that, this is the third year where Mercedes have had to deal with bouncing despite throwing so much after to try and get rid of it? Is there a sense now that with Lewis in particular, he's just getting fed up now?
I think there's a definite sense of that. I think anybody would be getting fed up with it.
Oh, yeah. And a headache.
Well, those were certainly encountered in year one of these regulations. They no doubt made a step forward last year, albeit in a car that was not quite as quick. Even though, obviously, it failed to win a race last year. For the first time since 2011, Mercedes failed to win a Grand Prix. We all know what issues Mercedes has had over these 2 years of these regulations. They've come into this season with a revised car that they undoubtedly hope would take them closer to Red Bull, at least give them a fighting chance. And as Lewis has put it, 2 qualifyings, P8, P9, it's not what he expected. It's not what Mercedes expected. And for anybody thinking, oh, well, maybe he's not pushing now because he's going to Ferrari next season, make no mistake, that is not what Lewis Hamilton is all about. That's for certain.
Well, he's a 7-time world champion for a reason at the end of the day. Moving on to RB, because they were the talking point last week in Bahrain for the wrong reasons. Today, Yuki Tsunoda into Q3 has actually qualified 5 places ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. That's a pretty good turnaround given the situation he found himself in last week in Bahrain.
That was a hell of a split, wasn't it? When you consider coming out of Q2, I think Yuki was 6th quickest, and Daniel starts 14th, if I remember right.
It's 14th, yeah, and
14th, so
Yuki's P9.
Yeah, so 8 places difference coming out of Q2. That was a big blow for Daniel, especially. He's not quite hooked up with the car around this track, whereas Yuki most certainly has a better feeling for it, at least. So he's in a reasonable position. RB overall, I would suggest that they've got a better handle on both sides of the garage, even if Daniel hasn't qualified in the position that he would undoubtedly have hoped for, especially where his teammate is. And when we think as the intra-team battle between those two for what will be, or for what they hope is going to be, that second Red Bull seat alongside Max Verstappen next season, Yuki's certainly come out on top from qualifying in this session at least. And it has as well also redeemed himself to a certain degree when you think of what took place between him and Daniel at the end of the Bahrain Grand Prix last week, when Yuki was not happy at all about the team orders that were imposed, and he most certainly rubbed Daniel up the wrong way with a dive bomb move right at the end of that race, of course. So there's a little bit of needle the air has been cleared, but Yuki most definitely is now, for now, but Yuki most definitely has made a degree of amends with his qualifying performance today.
Something I thought a statistic that was quite staggering is that actually RB compared to last year in Saudi Arabia have made the biggest improvement. And in fact, actually 9 of the 10 teams are quicker this year in Saudi Arabia than they were last year. The one team who were actually 3/10 slower than they were last year is Alpine, who, yes, I did say yesterday my bold prediction, which just turned out to be a very, very bold prediction, but more importantly, a very, very wrong prediction. I did say that Pierre Gasly would make it to Q3. Both Alpines out in Q1. It just gets worse. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think I'm glad you held your hands up there, Nick, and at least
I'm an honest person. I will accept it when I'm wrong.
A little bit of embarrassment on your side. You are meant to be a knowledgeable Formula One journalist at the end of the day. That both of them are saying the same thing. Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. There are so many things wrong with that car. It's almost like, where does the team begin to try and correct it? Both of them as well, as one, know that the best they can do at the moment is to be there for the team, the entire team around them, to try and give them moral support, to be the crutch on which, the wider team can lean on. Because they're the ones, they are front and center of this team, as we all know. They are the face of the team. So the positive is that both Esteban and Pierre are not hammering Alpine. They are at least trying to, as I say, pick them up, be positive. That's all they can do. This is a long haul for this team, without a shadow of a doubt. And it's a question of, yes, there are upgrades coming. Are they going to be good enough? Because, as I say, it's not just one thing that's wrong with this car. It's numerous things, and that's a major problem when you're trying to make your way out of as big a hole as this team has dug itself into for the start of this season.
Now, for the majority of today, the big talking point was obviously Oliver Bearman getting his chance at Ferrari. And that was until Red Bull advisor Dr. Helmut Marko spoke to the media, and the plot thickens regarding the investigation into Red Bull team principal and CEO Christian Horner. Ian, I'm getting really tired of this story now, but it goes on.
At least, Nick, this is a slightly different twist now. This is arguably one that you could say nobody saw coming. But Helmut gave an interview to Austrian television station ORS, and he was asked about the possibility. I'm not quite sure why this was actually raised, to be honest with you, but he was asked about the possibility of him being suspended. And he has basically turned around and said, there is the possibility he could be suspended. We're not quite sure yet as to the reasons why. We understand there is the suspicion behind the scenes that he is or may have been the person that leaked the story in the first place with regard to the fact that there was an investigation taking place about Christian Horner and, of course, the female Red Bull employee that made allegations of inappropriate behaviour against him, which, of course, we now know he was cleared. But as you say, it goes on. We thought we were going to have a day free of this. In particular, we thought we'd got a lovely, and we still have, let's face it, it's been a fantastic story around Ollie Bearman.
Yeah, it has been.
But at the end of it, this hasn't overshadowed it. For once, what's going on with Helmut has not overshadowed. But I'm just going to add this for our listeners and viewers, Nick. The major point here is what Max Verstappen has come out with. He is a massive supporter of Helmut. As many people I'm sure know, he has made it clear that should anything happen to Helmut, that would most definitely put his future with Red Bull at jeopardy. He said it again tonight. This is now going beyond more than just Christian and what's going on with the investigation that occurred into him. And there is still an appeal process that is open to the woman concerned inside Red Bull. But for Red Bull to potentially lose Max Verstappen, that would be one almighty bombshell that would really blow the team apart.
Something gives me the feeling that silly season might be on the verge of becoming even sillier. Ian, just finally, your podium predictions for tomorrow and also a bold prediction.
I can't see anything beyond another Red Bull 1-2.
Agreed.
Unfortunately, that RB20 has proven itself to be the class act. Max, once again, is proving himself to be the class driver. Bold prediction, I'm going to go 3 safety car periods. There we go. Let's have something to really spice up the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix.
I would take that.
Yeah, I think many people would take that. What about you, Nick? Let's go for something.
You didn't mention though who's in third though. It was a Red Bull 1-2.
Red Bull 1-2.
Who are you going for? This could change who I go for. So it's quite important.
Yeah. I think Fernando might just have the edge over the Ferraris. If the Ferraris struggle again like they did in Bahrain, then I think that would be a feel-good story as well, with Fernando back on the podium. As for Ollie Bearman, he's just going to be happy with points. Just one final point about Ollie. He did mention that this will be the hardest and longest race of his career. Perhaps quite obviously so, bearing in mind the situations faced himself in throughout his career so far. So Lewis Hamilton said he faces a major challenge, but from what he's seen of Ollie so far, he's absolutely confident that he can rise to it. And I think any points for Ollie Bearman tomorrow will be a major feather in his cap. So go on then, Nick. What about you?
Okay, you know what? I'm going to go for it. It's going to be a Red Bull 1-2, Max first, Checo second, Oscar Piastri P3. If there's going to be 3 safety cars, like you said, who knows why the safety cars are going to be needed in the first place? Maybe Fernando will take out Leclerc. Maybe Leclerc will take out Fernando. We'll find out tomorrow. And bold prediction, to be honest, I don't even think it's a bold prediction by my standards, but actually, Bearman to get points. Actually, I think he's done so well today. I don't think that is a bold prediction necessarily, but I'm going to say it anyway. Ian, as always, amazing. And you will hear from myself and Ian tomorrow after we've had hopefully 3 safety cars. From everyone at racingnews365.com, we will see you tomorrow. See you later.
And folks, just to conclude, drop us your predictions. Join in with the chat. Help Nick and I with our conversation. Give us your thoughts. Any topics you want to talk about, we're happy to do so. Thank you.
Good stuff. See you later, guys.